Hello. Um, Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present the panel session on fine-tuning Wi-Fi 7 adoption, and I'm joined here by my three great guests, Giuseppe Galeone, Robert, Stacey, and Gaurav Jain. I'll give each of them a chance to introduce themselves now. So, Giuseppe, you can go first.
Yeah, ciao everyone. I'm Giuseppe Galeone. I'm working Sky Italy. Let me quickly introduce my company. Sky Italy is a tech media company founded in 2003. We are part of a Sky Group that is controlled by Comcast. We have a wide range of products, both on TV and on the broadband side, like Sky Glass, Sky Stream, Sky QN, Sky Wi-Fi. That is our broadband talk proposition, let's say, where I work. And we have launched in the 2020 our ultra broadband service proposition, both in fiber, so FTTH and RTTC. And in particular, I look after the product introduction and product management for, let's say, all the products in Italy for Sky Wi-Fi.
Great. Robert, you can go next.
Hello, everybody. My name's Robert Stacey. I'm employed by Intel Corporation, and I am the 802.11 Working Group Chair. 802.11 is the group that produces the technical standard behind Wi-Fi.
Great. And Gaurav?
Hello, everyone. I'm Gaurav Jain, Vice President, Technology, Wi-Fi Alliance. Wi-Fi Alliance is where all the certification work happen, and Wi-Fi Alliance is the one that brings you Wi-Fi. Glad to be on the panel.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. So as you can see, we've got a wide range of companies represented here. We've got broadband operators, we've got the IEEE Alliance working groups, and then we've got the Wi-Fi Alliance. So I think Wi-Fi 7, we all know it's here. Of course, we're hearing about Wi-Fi 8 and what's happening there, but I think the key is the adoption of Wi-Fi 7, right? It's still relatively early days. We're expecting a big ramp up this year and beyond, but I think we're here to discuss what's going to accelerate this and what's going to limit this. So I think what I'd ask each of you, what are the kind of key features that you see with Wi-Fi 7 that customers are, really enjoying the benefits of, and how do you see those applying to the end consumers, to operators, and even enterprises and industrial use cases? So whoever would like to go first.
I can go. Well, the obvious key feature of Wi-Fi 7 is the multi-link operation. There's not a lot of implementation of that at the moment, but there's a flavor of it called single radio multi-link operation, which I think customers should be able to benefit from today. That's a mode of operation where you connect to the Wi-Fi to the access point on two channels at the same time, and then you switch between the two channels. So it has you listen on both channels, but you talk on one of the channels, and that has the potential to reduce latency.
Right, makes sense. Giuseppe, on the operator side.
Yeah, now what I think is very interesting of Wi-Fi 7 is that we started already with Wi-Fi 6, but I think that Wi-Fi 6, yes, but I think that Wi-Fi 7, we are really switching from the concept on only throughput to a concept related more to the experience, no? For example, what we call the quality of outcome or quality of experience of the customer. So Wi-Fi 7 is important because the MLO for sure is one thing that Robert mentioned. The other thing is the puncturing. That is very interesting because, for example, we see a lot of cases where there are interference, no? Where today we have to, let's say, switch from, let's say, one channel to another directly, no? And not use, for example, a subband of the spectrum like the puncturing could be. But in general, let's say the overall reduction in latency, no? Is something that really today, I think that from an operator point of view, really matters now, because today is very important, let's say, to tailor the experience to what the customer is doing. Now, not only, let's say, the connection itself, but also which kind of device is using, which kind of application is using on that device. So we know that, for example, today, a home worker is using a lot, let's say, Teams calls or Zoom calls like this one. And it is very important, it's more and more important that the Wi-Fi standards look to this direction, like the Wi-Fi 7 does with the latency and with all the kind of stuff that we mentioned.
Yep, that makes sense. And I guess Gaurav, just to kind of build on that point, we've got 6 GHz. That's a big differentiator of Wi-Fi 7 over Wi-Fi 6. How do you see that kind of playing into things?
Yes, Taimur. So first of all, I completely agree with both the panelists as they outlined the Wi-Fi 7 benefits. I'll say this, MLO is fundamentally the game changer in how the devices are utilizing the spectrum simultaneously and dynamically and intelligently. And like you said, you add 6 GHz to a dual band MLO, and that is where the magic happens. The real value lies. 1200 megahertz, whether it is low power, whether it is standard power, that's truly a game changer for delivering the advanced applications in industrial collaboration, AR/VR use cases, cloud gaming. I'll also mention this that um, ultimately the technology can only take us so far if the user is not consistently experiencing those benefits in real networks, then the reach of so much of hard work from the innovators and inventors and the industry, it gets limited. One last point on this, it has been the case with the past couple of Wi-Fi generations, but with Wi-Fi 7, it is even more apparent and clear that the complexity across Mac and Phi is no longer linear. It's no longer additive. It is compounding. And eventually the need for interoperability and interoperability certifications, it shouldn't be seen as optional anymore. It is foundational to the whole ecosystem.
Right. No, those are very good points, and some of them we'll touch on in a little bit, and especially the quality of experience that you mentioned and Giuseppe mentioned. I think we can dig a bit deeper into that. So, Giuseppe, from the operator point of view, we've got, you've got the Wi-Fi 7 in the home, Wi-Fi 6, whatever, but I guess the access network is very important, right, in determining the experience that the end user actually receives. So, how do you see the access network, whether it's fiber, whether it's DSL cable, or even FWA?
Yeah.
How does that
Yeah,
impact
right.
the Wi-Fi 7
Yeah,
adoption?
right. Yeah, right. Because it's a very good point. Because at the end, say to enable the full power of the Wi-Fi 7, for sure you have to have all the end-to-end, no, that enable that kind of power. So important part is the access network. So, for example, if today you have a Wi-Fi 7 CPE, no, router with an FTTC or an ADSL, it doesn't make sense, honestly, no. So today, for example, in Italy, we have, the full fiber. There is also a broadband plan, a national broadband plan to have, let's say, all the country, let's say, covered by fiber. But we oversee also to the adoption of not only the up to 1 gig, no, but also 2.5, 5 gig or 10 gig, that probably will be the full benefit of the Wi-Fi 7 in also industrial and enterprise application, no? Like the one that Gaurav mentioned before. So, Wi-Fi 7 makes sense with fiber, with full fiber, honestly, from the operator point of view.
Right. No, that's a good point. And I think when we go further into the CPE, you've also got the dual band versus tri-band split as well, right? Where dual band,
Yes.
of course, is more cost effective, but tri-band has the superior experience. So
Yeah, no, exactly. Something that we have seen also from, the test that we performed in our lab. At the end, Wi-Fi 7 is great also the MLO if you have the two band, but the real benefit for the customer, for the end user, is when you use the 6 band, the 60 gigahertz band, because it's there that you see really a lot higher throughput. We did some kind of a comparison test between Wi-Fi 6 with WMM enabled, no, versus Wi-Fi 7 two band, 2.4 and 5 with the single MLO. I mean, the results for sure are better than Wi-Fi 7, but not so much better. Instead, when you enable the 6 gigahertz, okay, there you see really the difference, and really, let's say, an upgrade in terms of customer experience, in terms of latency, mainly.
Right. Robert, so I guess to build on this, of course, the tri-band and dual band MLO stuff, that's the real difference maker, but then the end devices need to really support this, right? So I guess how are you seeing that side of things where we have to bridge the gap, right? So the operator can
Right.
deploy the Wi-Fi 7, but what are the end devices doing to support this?
Right. So that's the challenge with Wi-Fi 7. So we limited in what spectrum we have available. We've got what we can from the regulators, but it's limited to sort of individual chunks. And the only way we can take advantage of those limited chunks is to do multi-link. I mean, that is the future. It's the only way we're going to get any throughput improvement with Wi-Fi. And so MLO adoption is fundamental to that. Now, there are a lot of implementation challenges around that on the client side. On the CPE side, on the AP side, it's a little easier. You have a box and you can separate the antennas. And so when you're transmitting on one antenna, the leakage back into the other antenna is you can limit it to some extent by separating the antennas and doing some things in the container itself. But on the client side, that's not the case. On the client side, it's a much smaller form factor, and so the interference that when you're transmitting on one radio, leaking into the other radio is quite significant, and it's a very difficult challenge to overcome. So my expectation is that we'll see a gradually more and more adoption, multi-radio adoption in the client side, but I think it's going to take some time. The way that people are doing it today is are trying to do it today is by filtering between the 5 and 6 gigahertz band. So putting a strong filter in the device so any leakage from the 6 gigahertz into the 5 gigahertz band is limited. But it's still very challenging. I think that's the biggest issue facing multi-link operation going forward. But as I say, I think I don't think we can go. There's potentially some very high frequency bands available in the future, but for some time in the near future, I think the only way we're going to see throughput improvement is through a multi-link operation.
Right, makes sense. And Gaurav, if you have anything to add on the client side as well.
I'll say in general, take another angle from where we see things and what Wi-Fi Alliance is doing to overcome some of the challenges. Excuse me. Like Robert mentioned, so there are several MLO operating modes. There are several new advanced rich features, link coordination, reconfiguration, power management mechanisms, MCS enhancements, 320 megahertz bandwidths, different security requirements and configurations, right? You name it, right? And none of these features, they operate in isolation. And while the spec, it allows for flexibility, you bring in different hardware and different driver stacks, and they may all behave slightly and maybe significantly different from each other, which again makes an even stronger case for implementers to trust their implementations, but also pursue interoperability.
Right.
I cannot speak from an operator point of view, but I heard the panelists. But what we are consistently hearing, Taimur, from service provider operators is that the challenge with Wi-Fi 7, it is not that much about understanding the benefits, but it is about delivering those and they show up in the real world. And from Wi-Fi Alliance point of view, what we are doing is that we are directly working with both the service providers as well as the device vendors to expand an operator-focused testing to close these gaps that we have identified, corresponding to not just the interoperability piece, but also consistently enabling those Wi-Fi 7 features which we all talk about.
Right. Right. Yeah. And Giuseppe, I think you can definitely add to that
Yeah,
from.
yeah. No, exactly. Also from the operator angle. No, let's give some stats on this from because the issue, I mean, the problem of the Wi-Fi 7 adoption is from one point, the availability of the end devices, no, the smartphone, for example. And the other part, let's say the router, no, they should support the Wi-Fi 7. Starting from the devices, okay, if at the beginning of 2025, so 1 year ago, the overall percentage of the devices of the smartphone in Italy that supported the Wi-Fi 7 was about 2%. So given 10 device, 10 smartphone, only 2 of them supported Wi-Fi 7. Now, after a year, we are about at close to the 10%. That is a lot in a year, honestly. No? That is clearly indicates that now, let's say, the devices, the support of Wi-Fi 7 for the device is growing a lot. So probably now it begins to be, let's say, a good moment, let's say, to a good appetite for Wi-Fi 7. On the other end, the 95% of those devices, those smartphones, are tri-band. This is also another very good, interesting thing for the things that we have seen, we have said before about the 6 gigahertz. And then there are the router. No? For example, now in Italy, all or mostly all the CP that are available from the ISP are only dual band. No, this is why, probably because of the price. The point is that again, dual band, you know, it's also difficult to show to the end customer the clear benefit, no, of the Wi-Fi 7 in that way. I think that until this point, it was more a marketing claim, the Wi-Fi 7. I think that starting from now, no, and the next year will be start really, to be something that could be a game changer for the customer. No, this is also important because from an operator point of view, I mean, you know, all the Wi-Fi standards are cool, but you have to understand also when is the correct moment to introduce a new SKU in your environment, because then there are all the operational costs, the building costs, and so on. So it's a cost, it's an investment, no? But I think that starting from now we are seeing good numbers that indicates that the Wi-Fi 7 could be really be adopted with the clear benefits for the customer.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in terms of your customers, of course you've got the end users, but one of the questions that's just coming in from the audience is that what kind of new business models or services can become more viable now with the MLO from Wi-Fi 7? So how can it benefit industrial or enterprise use cases? And this can also, Robert and Gaurav, you can also chip in here.
I'll chip in. You know, it's become a bit of a cliche, but these new AI applications and their need for low latency. So, you know, one of the key benefits of Wi-Fi 7 is reduced latency. There are 1 or 2 features in there that help with that. The single radio multi-link, but there's some other features that provide some latency benefit. But certainly the overall reduction in latency should help. Is going to Wi-Fi 7 provide some benefits there.
Yep, makes sense. Gaurav or Giuseppe, if you want to add anything, or
Sure. Yeah, Taimur. Like I said, 12 megahertz in 6 gigahertz is going to be where the real value is. I mean, 2.45 is great, has been great, serving Wi-Fi and the new technology, new innovation, but cloud collaboration is one that we see as big. Even automotive, with new regulations that are coming up, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. I think those certainly open several new use cases and business models with Wi-Fi 7, not just Wi-Fi 7, even the work that's happening in the industry for the future generations. I think they'll be very useful.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I guess the regulation point that you just mentioned, that's a good way to jump into that. I think regulation's really evolving, right? It's changing, and it really depends where you are geographically. So what's the case in the US? It might be completely different in China and the EU. So how how much of an, of course, it's having a big impact, but how are you seeing that impact, and are you seeing a geographical split where maybe, some regions are far ahead in the adoption rate for Wi-Fi 7 and others maybe further behind?
Yeah. So let's look at the global picture, right? So I'll say in general, the 6 gigahertz rulemaking and adoption is making huge leaps. So consider the very recently, if you look at UK Ofcom, it's a good example. The ongoing work to enable the entire 1200 megahertz for standard power, that is going to be tremendous for the industry. It's that kind of positive progress that EU should be paying close attention to and take note of. And Wi-Fi Alliance is continuing to urge EU policymakers to authorize Wi-Fi access in the upper 6 gigahertz band. But in general, if you look at in the US itself, specifically around the new regulations that are to be adopted soon, later this month, I believe, is around geofenced variable power. It's a new 6 gigahertz device class that will soon be established by FCC, which is in the recently published fourth report and order. It is mentioned the rules around that. So the supporting ecosystem for these future GVP devices, it's yet another enabler for new use cases, specifically, like I mentioned earlier, around mobility for the US market. Um, the GVP should be seen as it is building around the centralized geofencing system. It is giving a design which is privacy preserving, and it is also an area-based spectrum authorization for exclusion and inclusion zones, providing 11 dBm per megahertz of PSD and EIRP of 24. Not necessarily tied to Wi-Fi 7 because this framework is agnostic to Wi-Fi generations, right? So Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8 and beyond all will benefit from these flexible geofencing based rules. And what FCC is doing through GVP is that they are continuing to lead and creating new pathway to how to better and improve the spectrum utilization in the 6 gigahertz band. At the same time, protecting the incumbent services, the fixed microwave services in the band.
Right. And I think that GVP is a good point. And I guess, who do you see as the main winners from GVP? Which type of businesses or which services will really prosper?
Absolutely.
Um, I guess the question.
Taimur, just to add,
Yes,
yeah.
of course, Gon,
Sorry,
just.
and just to add some data. No, I mean,
Mhm.
if we think today about, let's say, the spectrum allocation of 6 gigahertz, we have to take in account that 90% of traffic today is via Wi-Fi, not
Right.
via cellular network.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all let's say all the parties that think about the spectrum allocation should have this in mind. That is the Wi-Fi, the 90%, not the cellular allocation.
Yeah.
Cellular network.
And the other thing to remember is that almost all indoor communication is Wi-Fi. It's not cellular.
Exactly.
People are using Wi-Fi. And the countries that don't have 6 gigahertz band are going to suffer because of this. And I think some countries are in better positions than others. And the other thing to remember is that, or the other thing to sort of be aware of, is that there's going to be a huge explosion of connected devices in the near future as as AI picks up, and more you carry around more and more connected devices. So this, the availability of spectrum is going to be a huge differentiator between how useful some of these technologies are in different countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, as you mentioned, as the numbers of connected devices increase, you see more congestion, right, on the 5
That's
gigahertz
right,
band.
and
Yeah,
not
go
just that, Bluetooth is going into the 5 gigahertz band. So there'll be other technologies in there as well. So yeah.
So yeah, that I guess that also pushes, the adoption of 60
Congestion.
60
Yeah.
gigahertz. Yeah. So I think that's important to note. Um, we've just actually had a question come in. It's a little bit different, but smartphones on the Wi-Fi 7 networks with MLO, they may have slightly higher battery consumption compared to Wi-Fi 6. Is there any way to address that, or I guess resolve that issue, or is that just an expected?
That's expected. The thing is the way to measure battery consumption is power per bit transferred. And we've seen this problem in the past. You expand the front end, you expand the channel width of the front end, and you see higher consumption at an instantaneous level. But if you look at it over time, it's reduced consumption because your radio, because you can transfer the same amount of data in a smaller amount of time, your radio is on for less. So yes, you'll see, the power consumption is higher at any one point in time because you have two radios but in terms of power per bit, it's lower.
Right, that makes sense. Right, so I guess just back to the regulatory topic, just for that question. So I guess as you mentioned, some countries are better placed, some countries are, let's say, a little bit further behind. How can that then, how can we help or push the messaging to regulators in these countries that are a little bit further behind to, why they need the 6 gigahertz band? Of course, MLO and benefits are quite apparent, but that's apparent to the service providers and to the end users and, the device vendors. But how can regulators receive this messaging?
Well, I think it was brought up earlier. 90% of Wi-Fi internet traffic comes over Wi-Fi. So that just keep pushing that point. That's the key one to understand.
Correct. Now, let's say that, for example, in Italy, we have a group where we discuss this, and at least I tried, but there are a lot of other colleagues now that try to let's say pass this kind of message. At the end, the vast majority of traffic is over Wi-Fi. We cannot ignore that.
Yeah. The other thing is to try and push back against the cellular marketing as well. A lot of countries see spectrum as infrastructure, and they see the money spent on building out cellular, and they see the economic activity around the build out of cellular, but they don't see the equivalent build out. It's not as apparent. The build out on Wi-Fi is not as apparent as it is on cellular, and governments are much more inclined to work with cellular operators and so forth because they see the infrastructure investment. It's more transparent to them. So making them aware of the economic activity around Wi-Fi is also key.
Yeah, that's a great point actually. And I guess going from here, we can go into the devices and I guess the coexistence of Wi-Fi 7 with some of the older legacy Wi-Fi standards and how the performance is actually functioning in the real world, right? Because it's one thing to say, the theoretical performance of Wi-Fi 7, but what's actually happening? And maybe Giuseppe, you might have some good input as an operator. What speeds are you actually seeing in the home?
Yeah. Now let's say that the biggest challenge, let's say, in the customer home, in the in-home network, really are the management of the congestion, of the Wi-Fi congestion. And let's say the older version of the Wi-Fi or the devices you have, and the worse it is. So what let's say we tried to do in the last 5 years or 6 years, starting when we launched it, was to try to find a way to optimize, let's say, the spectrum to change automatically channel, to try to have, let's say, an experience for the customer that could be, let's say, good, depending on the application that is running, also consider the device. Now, the really good point of the Wi-Fi 7 with the MLO, the puncturing, for example, is that the Wi-Fi 7 is doing that in order by default. And that's an important point. On the other end, you have to build, let's say, your ecosystem. For example, we have our ecosystem in the cloud that try, let's say, to manage all this kind of stuff together. So looking to the older version of the Wi-Fi, doing something proactively, for example, from the cloud. Instead, let the Wi-Fi 7 to do his job. No, that he's doing very, very, very good. I mean, for the operator point of view, it's not simple to do that. No, also because there are all the Wi-Fi standard then gives a different, let's say, angle to attack and different problematic, they try to solve. But let's say, when the point is, the message is where, let's say, the Wi-Fi technology doesn't arrive, no, you have to build something to do the work, to do the job.
Right, makes sense. So Gaurav, I guess, what would you say are your key takeaways, and what's the real message you want to push, I guess?
Yeah, thanks, Taimur. I totally agree with what he mentioned earlier, because regardless of the dual band or tri-band or different use cases, the reality with Wi-Fi 7, and for that matter, for any future Wi-Fi generations, will be that mixed environments is going to be the norm, right? Mixed security configuration, mixed generation of device ecosystem, they are inevitable. So Wi-Fi 7 devices, they'll have to share and serve alongside Wi-Fi 6, 6E, even older devices for a long time. And in Wi-Fi lines, our approach has been deliberately twofold. So just last year in December 2025, on one hand, we released new Wi-Fi 7 certification updates, like capabilities like Robert was talking about, single link EMLSR, restricted TWT, 20 megahertz profile support for client devices, and all these to support real deployment scenarios, right? So these are additional capabilities adding on to what we released back in January 2024. But then at the same time, we are also strengthening the forward and backward compatibility testing to ensure that Wi-Fi 7 and older devices, they are behaving with stability and predictably in these different mixed environments, which are there and will continue to exist. So basically the goal is clear, that we
Right.
want to continue to enable new work, new innovation, but also we need to preserve the billions of devices that are out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. So I think we have 2 minutes left. So I guess, Robert, I'll give you a quick, 30 seconds just to say your key takeaways.
Quick second. Yeah, I mean, Wi-Fi is a very rich technology. There's a lot of features, even in existing devices. And the mix of devices in the environment is changing. And I think we'll see as we move forward that some of the features that we adopted earlier on, like multi-user operation, for example, in Wi-Fi 6, we'll see more and more use going forward as we enter a more congested environment. Wi-Fi 7 itself, from the .11 perspective, there's a lot of flavors of multi-link operation, and we'll see more of those roll out in the future as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And yeah, I think we've had a great discussion on Wi-Fi 7 adoption, and we are hearing about Wi-Fi 8, but I think we need to get Wi-Fi 7 out there first and see what happens from there. So I think that should be everything. I've asked the questions throughout, so there are no audience questions left. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks everyone.